Hello, welcome back to Map Time with Professor Prime, and I'm your host as always, Professor Prime. So, Devil May Cry 3 rocks, and I want to talk about it. I've talked about Devil May Cry a lot on my channel. I've talked about Devil May Cry 3 in particular a lot over the years. And that whole idea of like Devil May Cry 3 rocks, that is its own like sub-series of my whole Math and Devil May Cry series that I have that's ongoing. And I'm going to talk about that. I'm excited to talk about Devil May Cry 3 in general, but I'm especially excited to talk about it because it is of this year. At the time of recording, it has hit 20 years old, and that is awesome. And I was there from the beginning. And so it's like I want to talk about my experience with it, like my first go around with it and my experience with it over the years, because like Devil May Cry 3 is like an important game that's been impactful as far as gaming goes, but also impactful in my life. Like because I feel like it's such a fun like game, right? Like such a fun story that like it hits you hard while you're having a blast and it motivates you. It's like it's ridiculous and it's over the top in the best possible way, and it knows it. It's aware of it. It relishes in that like regard. It rolls with everything, and we're gonna get into all that too. And like for me, I like talking about gaming in general. I like talking about Devil May Cry. And you know that I like talking about math. And so it's no wonder why I keep on coming back to that, among other things that I've talked about over the years. So I am going to have a blast talking about it today. And you know what? I'm just going to go super off the rails. Like, I have an idea about what I want to say, but fuck it. That's that kind of energy I want to roll with today. And we're going to act like it's a choice. I'm excited about this game. I'm excited to talk about it in this fashion. And so it was probably going to go this way anyway. Um, I think before I continue, though, it's worth noting that there are absolutely going to be spoilers ahead. Spoilers for Devil May Cry 3, for damn sure, but also Devil May Cry in general. And not just the games, but also the manga from back in the day and the two animated shows, because I might mention them as I go. And they're fair game, and I don't want to hold back. So that's the idea. Spoilers for everything Devil May Cry. Let's get into it. Let's rock. Okay, so here we go. Devil May Cry 3 first came out back, at least in the States, it came out in March, back in 2005. I think like a few weeks ago in Japan, back in like, I think mid February, it came out. And then it hit us like a few weeks later. Um, so it was like I got it that following Friday, or that Friday of that week, because it was like it came out on March 1st, 2005 in North America, and that was on a Tuesday. And so like that Friday, I was geared up, and I went to the store to go get it. Right. Now, just to be clear, I had gotten games, and like getting carded was not a thing for a while that I had to worry about, even with my parents. And I looked younger back then. But around that time, that started to be an issue for me. And I got carded, and they didn't think the idea I had was enough, which is quite frankly very annoying. And so, like, at that point, right, like, my parents were in the car, and so my mom had to come in and just like let them know. Which, I couldn't even feel bad about that because, like, one, my mom was cool, and she had my back on that. And even though I was annoyed by that store at the time, I was determined to get that game, and so I did, and I played it. I played it, and I played it, and I played it. And it's worth noting that so the original version of Devil May Cry 3, the North American edition, our normal was the Japanese hard. And that's not something a lot of people knew right away. And so it's like you were in for a rude awakening. If you were playing, well, Devil May Cry 3, Dante's Awakening. Sorry, that was bad. Well, really not sorry. So here's the thing. It was crazy. It was very, very crazy. So you felt it. You felt the challenge. And I think for a lot of people, that kicked in on mission three. But before we get into it, right? Let's talk about like the opening. Well, let's talk about like leading up to Devil May Cry 3. Because okay, here's the thing. If we go way back, The first Devil May Cry. I got that back in 2003 when I first got my PlayStation 2. I was a little behind in getting that because, money. And I when PlayStation 2 came out, I was like 13. So it's like, yeah, I didn't get it then. And there was a point where I didn't have like a lot of money coming in because, again, I was a kid. And so I had to make a decision. It's like, do I save up and get a PlayStation 2, which was like too pricey for me to get at the time, or do I get another PlayStation because my older one had broken, which had been cheaper at that time? So I got the PS1. And I caught up on a lot of PS1 games that I didn't get to play growing up. Because I played some PS1 games, but there was so much out there. Because like PS1 has a huge library, much like PS2 does, right? Like, and they both have monstrous libraries, and like PS2 has like to me the best video game library like of all time, like on its own. Like, sorry, when you consider the games that came out for it in particular, that's my opinion, and but yeah. So eventually, though, right? Like I saved up and I got a PS2, and my first two games for it were Devil May Cry and Prince of Persia: Sands of Time. And so I at that time again like didn't have a lot of money coming in. So I would like play games over and over again. And just to be clear, if I liked the game, I was gonna do that anyway, and that's just how we operate. Um, and so, but I got to like play those games, and it's a good thing that I like them to the extent that I did because I played them over and over. And at the time that I got it, and I was psyched. During my PS2, my initial PS2 run, like it became clear that Devil May Cry 2 was out there at a certain point, right? And it's like I had heard, seen, and read horrendous things about it, and that did not deter me from wanting to play it at all. But it didn't exactly motivate me to want to play it. Now, I did end up playing it, despite Devil May Cry 3 being a prequel, because I wanted to play all of the Devil May Cries, and just for the record, it's not that bad of a game, but that's neither here nor there. This is mostly about Devil May Cry 3. I'm just doing some build up. Okay, so at that point, right, I played Devil May Cry. I dug the crap out of it. I played Devil May Cry 2 after, hearing about Devil May Cry 3 coming out because I wanted to play, both games first, even though, again, Devil May Cry 3 was a prequel. So, yeah, I ended up doing that. And again, it's Devil May Cry 2 is not as bad as some people say that it is, but it's not great either. It's like, it's okay. And I don't feel like a Devil May Cry game should just be okay, but that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. Um, so at any rate, um, I'm excited to talk about this. Uh, Devil May Cry 3, we saw the trailers and it looked awesome. And at that point, I played the other games. And so Devil May Cry 3 finally comes around. And, I finally got it after the whole debacle and the gaming store. Like, and, just for the record, it was like EB games. And I don't know if that was like the policy overall, like the car people, but it's just like it's annoying because I did have some identification. They just deemed it not enough, um, which was frustrating, and that's a whole another thing. But at any rate, I got it, and what's funny about Devil May Cry 3? Like some things you play through a million times and it like sticks with you. Um, Me saying any rate, that's been impacted by like uh Dante saying that, and same with like fair enough, right? um that kind of just like seeps in to the way you talk to a degree if you like kind of get immersed in something long enough. And I just wanted to explain it because I found myself saying at any rate and a few times during this video, and I say that in general, but like it's really like popping out to me. Um so at any rate, I got the Devil May Cry 3, and I was just like, I was so psyched to play it. It starts off with a bang, like the opening, and then when you get to the first mission, it pumps you right into that action. And it goes hard, and like the music is just like bonkers. I enjoy Devil May Cry music in general, but Devil May Cry 3 is just like the soundtrack is like monstrous. It's demonic, appropriately so. And so it starts off with a bang. You're going through like those first couple missions, and you're like, oh man, this is cool. And the way they have things structured is, there are some scenes here and there as you're going around and you're playing on your different missions, but the larger moments kind of happen like They punctuate the missions like before and after. Again, there's something in between, but like you have that basic structure. And I could dig that because it's like, hey, here's some story, go do your thing. There's a little bit of story here and there in between, and then there's some more towards the end or right before like a major battle or something. And also, again, still at the end. And so it's like you can have some fun with that. So, I'm chugging along, I'm having fun. Again, like we were playing it on normal in the States, but it's like that was Japanese hard and we didn't know, but like I was still chugging along. But I first had difficulty with Cerberus. Oh yeah, some of y'all know about that. Because like I feel that you can play that on various like difficulties and it's a problem. So like playing that on hard when you don't have all the stuff that you would have at that point if you were playing it uh like if you played normal first, not having all that is like oof, it's brutal. So yeah, that was the like first difficult fight to me because like again, playing it on a harder difficulty, even if it was called normal at the time, and not only that, Cerberus is brutal. That you didn't have your devil trigger, you didn't have like a lot of options that you would get like later on. So it's like you're limited in what you could do style wise, what you can do weapon wise, what you can do demonically, but you beat them and it feels good. It can be frustrating in the beginning, but it feels good. And while we're here, because it doesn't get talked about enough, the Cerberus music, like throughout that battle, it goes so hard, like so fucking hard for like no good reason, right? Like it's because it's an early on fight and it is a tough boss fight, but it's like, oh, whoa, it's kicking. And if you haven't heard that, like the Cerberus thing, like roar with anger, you should look that up. It's good. So anyway, right, like that goes hard, and so you beat Cerberus, you keep on going, and it to me, it's just like steady, and then there's like points where it hits you even harder. So you're having a good time, and then you have like a really good time. And I think like by the time you get to mission seven, you've really been through it, right? Like but you're better. You've taken down some tough bosses. You've gotten some better weapons. You've increased your style, and you have your own personal preference with the style, but like and you've gotten more used to the game, right? And we're gonna get into the style more later, but I just wanted to kind of like walk through, what I am experience or what I experienced with the game and what some people are experienced when you're going and what you kind of experience in general. Um, so yeah, anyway, you get to mission seven, right? And yeah, that's the first fight with Virgil, and I dig it because like one, the lead up to the fight is cool, right? And it's a tough fight. Like even if you're used to what you're doing at that point, like if this is your first go at Virgil, you're realistically gonna get bodied. If you played it and you didn't get bodied, good for you. That is awesome. You should be proud of that. But like that is not the norm. And I think it's good though because it's I don't think it gets to a point in Devil May Cry 3 where you just want to like throw the controller or anything. I mean, that might be your thing personally. I don't know, but like I think in general, one of the good things that it does and what Devil May Cry does in general is like it can provide a challenge without making you frustrated, or at least like if you want to overcome the frustration because like I don't feel like most of the things like if you're playing like a regular sort of mode like it could be different difficulties like you could play like normal easy or hard or very hard whatever the case may be because like that very hard became a thing that was introduced later in the later editions with that right but on those modes if you're playing through it regular it doesn't feel unfair and even when you're playing something like Dante Must Die mode it's like it doesn't feel super unfair to me, right? Like bosses function a little different because they kind of have their own sort of devil trigger there. But by that point, you have so many different things in your arsenal. I was about to say weapon belt, but you have a lot because I was gonna say you have like a lot of tools in your utility belt, and that kind of got fused with the idea of like arsenal, and I was gonna say like weapon belt but that's neither here nor there. Okay, so at any rate, right? Like, you, I think in Devil May Cry, like it's pretty reasonable. So it's like, if you lose and you keep on losing, even if you get frustrated, I feel like to me the energy is like, hey, yeah, you lost that fight, get good, you can do it, right? Like, so I feel like it's one of those things where the challenge is there, And yeah, you're probably gonna lose some fights, but the idea is like you can be better, right? Like you can improve as you go on, right? Because like you can improve your style, you can improve your weapons, you can get more comfortable with what works for you. You can learn like different enemies and their tactics. And I feel like even with that, when you first fight Virgil, you're probably gonna get bodied. And I say that because like throughout the game, right, you're fighting opponents that are quite different to Dante, right? And as you fight Virgil for that first time, he's similar to Virgil, and I'm sorry, he's similar to Dante, and that's the point, right? Like he's that foil, that shadow. Um, there's a literal like shadow of Dante in the game, but that's a whole nother thing, right? Like, but I mean in that more metaphorical, like overall sense. These are twins. They're two sides of the same coin, and so like those battles are so fun because like Virgil can largely move like you can move as Dante, but with his own spin. So you have to like you know, combat him on those terms, and he's also going to hit you hard and hit you fast and be a lot more aggressive than some of the other enemies in the game. And like it gets so insane like as you go on, but also as you like play higher difficulties. Anyway, so you're doing your thing, and through the game, you're hit with like increased challenge, and I think it works really well because a few things, right? So one of the big things is to me, like as you go through the story, right, like you're getting these challenges, and it all culminates with the big battle between Dante and Virgil, right? But there's a lot leading up to that point, right? Um, One of the big things is like for Devil May Cry, I don't feel like it gets enough credit for its story, right? Like some people just don't think of it as having much of a story, and I don't feel like they've really played the games that much or that well, or they weren't paying attention if they think that. Don't get me wrong, the story isn't perfect. There are some holes here and there, but largely it's a story that I can get behind, especially with Devil May Cry 3, because it feels very complete. And at its core, like it's a story about family and it's a story about trauma, right? And I think that's fascinating because like you have Dante and you have Virgil and you have Lady and you have Arkham. And with Dante and Virgil, you have like these two brothers, these two twins that they're very similar in some ways, but very different in others. They've been through pretty traumatic things, and how they deal with trauma impacts how they deal with the world and how they deal with each other. And you see that displayed wonderfully throughout the game, right? And it's just such an interesting thing because, right, like on some level, they clearly still have some, like larger connection, like they care about each other, is there, but they also hate each other. And that's also very clear. So it's just a fascinating thing because, they spend all game trying to kill each other. Um, but again, like the connection is still there. It's kind of funny because you have like Dante who kind of embraces more of the human side, and Virgil embracing more of the demonic side. But in both cases, they are both human and they are both demon, and they cannot fight those sides. And I think that's fascinating. I think that's pretty cool. And then like while you have Dante and Virgil having that connection, you also have the idea of Lady and Arkham. Arkham, he's not like the actual big bad because that's Virgil. Like, but he is the big bad in theory to a certain point. But again, it's Virgil overall. Like they're working together, and then he kind of gets a hit, and then like Virgil and Dante do their thing, and they have the ultimate conflict. And Virgil is arguably really like the big bad of the entire series when you think about it. Like it comes back to him. Like, and that's especially clear by the time you get to Devil May Cry 5. All right, so at any rate, so there's a lot going on in the game, right? There's 20 missions, and you go through, and you get to enjoy this story. You get to enjoy these characters like grow. It's like it's ridiculous and over the top, but it also has a lot of like deep moments. And one of the things, like going back to Mission Seven, is like so it had a lot of cool stuff building up to like right before Dante and Virgil like clash, but there's some cool stuff that comes after it. Like one, there's a dope ass cutscene, but it's like what happens after that that I also enjoy because like even though I played it like a million times, I probably don't remember the exact wording. We'll see. But there's a point where like Dante and Virgil like they're fighting, and then like Virgil's like, well, why do you refuse power? and all that stuff. And Dante, he kind of shrugs it off, right? And he's like, "Power, I just don't like you," and all that good stuff. And so like Dante says, like, sorry, Virgil says foolishness. Dante, foolishness. Um, Might controls everything, and without it, you can't protect anyone, let alone yourself. Um, Again, I might not be remembering exactly, but the idea is like they had an exchange. Um, Dante's pretty much like, I don't care about power. Virgil's like, nah, power's everything, brah. And they kind of go at it from there. But what I like about it is, they have all this cool fighting, and in the middle of that, you get Virgil saying something that really explains so much about his character in general, right? Because you have this dude who is obsessed with power, and you get that feeling that, like, yeah, he's not just preaching this to Dante just because. It's because he's like living it. He felt like he couldn't protect his mom or his brother or himself. And that clearly has haunted him, even if he's become so obsessed with power that he doesn't like outwardly acknowledge that. And I think that's saying something. And like with Dante, it's a fascinating thing because he might not have that same desire for power as Virgil, but time and time again throughout the series, it's having that extra power. And admittedly, what he did with the extra power that came through. Virgil always wants power and wants more power, even though he has so much. And Dante, even though he has so much, always needs like more power. And it's it's oftentimes with clashing with Virgil, but I like that dichotomy. And then like with Lady and Arkham, because I don't think I got into that like I wanted to. The idea is you have Lady who has a sense of duty and feels responsible for her family, and you have Arkham he's a dick. Like he has his family. Lady is his daughter. He openly killed his wife for more power, and you have this idea of a human who wanted to become a demon and did horrific things even before he became a demon. And you have someone like Dante with like demon blood, and even though he's kind of a dick in the beginning, he does good things. Like Lady gets through to him at a certain point throughout that story. And so, it's not so black and white, right? And I like that idea. And Arkham is just such an asshole throughout that game. So it's like he rightfully got his. But I just like the idea of like Lady and Dante, they have that connection of family, whether they realize that in the beginning, and because of that, they're able to understand each other a bit better. And Dante is able to get like more responsible as the game goes by because the Lady inspires him by having that dedication and that duty related to family. And I like that too. Also, while we're talking about Lady and Dante, like she tried to kill him more than once when they initially met. But what I like about that is she did not know he was human initially. There's a point where she shoots a rocket at him. She did not know this dude was a demon. She shot it at him, and then like later on, like she shot him in the head. And then was pretty much like, oh, so you're a demon, or like she was like, so he's a demon. And that's wild. But at any rate, so I like all those things about Devil May Cry. Like, it had a wonderful story, and then as far as the gameplay, it is like top notch. Like, Devil May Cry, just like it's this like beat 'em up hack and slash game that's just so fun because it's like, hey, we have like this tight knit melee combat, and we have the idea of a long range attacks, and you're bouncing back and forth between those, and you're being stylistic as hell while you're doing it. And so I dig that. I dig it a lot. And then it's like, and Devil May Cry 2 did add a few things here and there, but it didn't mix up the formula like too much. But then Devil May Cry 3 comes along. It's like, hey, we're gonna take all that and we're gonna refine it. We're gonna take what worked about Devil May Cry, we're gonna take what worked about Devil May Cry 2, and we're gonna expand upon it, and we're gonna add some new things. So it had some really tight knit combos that you could do, right? And it's like you had fun doing the melee, you had fun doing the long range stuff, and then there's like the style system. So it's like, hey, in the beginning you have like four styles, and you get two more as the game goes on, right? And so it's like you have Swordmaster, you have Trickster, you have Gunslinger, and Royal Guard, and it's like you can choose a style and then like change them in the middle of the level or at the beginning. In the Switch port, you could switch on the fly like in later Devil May Cry games, so that's pretty cool. But the whole idea is like each of these styles have different things they can do. like Swordmaster, like you're dishing out more damage and you have more combo options. With Gunslinger, you're doing some pretty cool stuff and dishing out more damage too. So you have like these different ways that these techniques or sorry, these styles are like cool, right? And then like with Trickster, like the really cool thing about that is it gives you some like evasive maneuvers, right? And you could really have some fun with that. In Royal Guard, it gives you more like defensive maneuvers. So you have this idea of like, hey, we have like two types of offense that you can play around with, and some like defensive options as well, right? And that's pretty cool. So you can decide what works better for you and your style. I think like if you're playing it that first time through, you're probably gonna like want to use Trickster a decent amount of time just because it gives you some more wiggle room, right? But if you're feeling more comfortable with things, you might try any of the other methods. Like for me, my favorite styles are Trickster and Swordmaster. Later in the game, you get Quicksilver, and that allows you to like slow things down and stuff like that. And you also get, sorry, the Doppelganger slide. Did I say slide? Style, and that allows you to create a duplicate. And fun fact, like if you have a second controller, you can you have the second person control that shadow, that duplicate. Also, if you have a second controller, there's a point where Dante and Virgil team up to fight Arkham, and you can control Virgil if you have that second controller. And so you can play that ways. And this is like you could do this before you got like the special edition. So that's pretty cool. So anyway, which I've said a decent amount of time during this. Um, you could have so much fun, and I am absolutely here for it. And I want to like get into the gameplay and get into specifics. I am gonna pause for a second and then jump right back to it, which should be relatively seamless. But I still wanted to mention it nonetheless because I might go on for a while. Cause fuck it, why not? Again, that's the energy for this. Super off the rails. If you're still sticking with me at this point, awesome. Keep on going. Let's rock. Hello, welcome back to Math Time with Professor Prime, and I'm your host as always, Professor Prime. So, I am back. We're doing Devil May Cry 3 Rocks. We're doing that video, and I mentioned it, even though it should be like fairly seamless, like when the videos are connected. I do have the two parts, and like if I post it like on TikTok in addition to like YouTube, I wanted to be like safe and maybe like upload those separately on TikTok. So, we'll see how that goes, but this will serve as an intro to the other video, and I'll try to like leave um, a description. Sorry, a link in the description, just so people can see the full thing if they want, if they're not already like viewing it on like YouTube or something. Okay, so let's continue. Let's rock. Okay, so we're talking about the gameplay, and it's just like it feels so good. It's like it's so like fast paced and like fluid, and you could get really carried away with the combos if you like, and you get good enough about them. I think if you're looking at the original, they're very good. I think where things get really crazy is like if you look at the Switch ports where you can like change the style on the fly, like you can in Devil May Cry 4, Devil May Cry 5. Like if you do that, then it becomes even crazier, and you can strategize and see what you want to do and just get like truly bonkers with the combos. And also there's a freestyle mode and that like switch port for Devil May Cry 3. So it's like not only can you like switch styles on the fly there, but you can also change your weapons out how you want to change your weapons out on that. You can put them all in there and just like cycle through them at your leisure, and just kind of just go ham on everything and like mixing it up and doing a crazy amount of combos. And there was already a lot of combos that you could do in the original. Yeah, so I had such a blast playing Devil May Cry 3. It was like it was challenging but good, and then I just like kept on playing it. And, I went on and I played other games, of course, but like I always came back to that at some point or another because like that's how it is. Like with games you enjoy, you find your way back to them. And what I like is, Devil May Cry 3 is like deliberately ridiculous and over the top. It's just like it relishes in that fact, and I am all the way here for it. And for me, like I can be ridiculous and over the top when I want, and I often am. And I felt encouraged by that game to do that and just like live it out. It's kind of funny because I think like Dante has a reputation for being a cool character, and at least for me, part of that coolness isn't just like what he's wearing or what he's doing. It's just that like sometimes he'll do stuff and he does not care. He does not give a fuck what anyone thinks, and I dig that because he does some things where someone could be like, okay, that sounded lame or that is lame. Dante doesn't care. He's just gonna do Dante, and I think that's pretty cool. I also like the connection between like Dante and Virgil. Like I talked about that, but it's like I like the connection between like style because like Virgil's very composed, right? Like and Dante's just like out in your face with it, especially in three. um, but they both clearly like style and like making some pretty grand gestures. Like they like kicking ass, but they want to make a show out of it. So yeah, I enjoy that, and then in that original run, like I mentioned, you can play as Virgil if you were doing like the Arkham fight, the second Arkham fight, where they team up. But eventually we got Devil May Cry 3 like special edition, right? And that it was like crazy because like you can play as Virgil as the whole game, and during Bloody Palace and all that, and my only thing though with that is like one, it, you can play as Virgil and that's cool as hell. But it's like they didn't really make many changes to the story, so it's like pretty much Virgil playing through Dante's story. Um, so there's that. It's like, and they don't really like when Virgil has to fight himself. If you're playing through the story mode, it's really just, like it's not Dante. It's pretty much like Virgil and like a red jacket, if I recall. And it's like this moves and skill set is the same. Now in Devil May Cry 5, they do like rectify that, so that's like pretty crazy. But yeah, it was like it's pretty fun. And with a special edition, it's even more fun because you can now play as Virgil in that. And then if you're playing the port, you get all of that, and that's wild to me because you get to play as Dante or you can play as Virgil. You get all the fixins. You get Bloody Palace. You can switch on the fly for your styles, and you can have freestyle mode for the weapons. So I think like the port is it's just one of those rare cases where it's like it's a port that actually does improve upon like the original. You know. So I think that's pretty crazy. That's pretty bonkers to me because it's like, hey, let's take Devil May Cry 3, but let's add like the quality of life improvements that you see in Devil May Cry 4 and Devil May Cry 5. Um, and yeah, I'm here for it. And again, it's just a fun game to play. And there's just so much that you could talk about mathematically, and that's something that I like have brought up multiple times on my videos because right, like you have the idea is like you're dishing out damage while trying to avoid taking it, and trying to make sure you take down your opponents, right? So you're starting at 100% health and you're trying to avoid going down to 0% at a minimum. Ideally you're staying at 100%, but so you're trying to do that while taking down someone or taking down several opponents, and is like something that's already inherently mathematical. And then it's like, well, how do you do that, right? Like you have the idea of combos, and while you're dishing out combos, you're keeping an eye on your opponents, and they have different, ways that they move that's indicated by their animation. So you're tracking all that, and you have your long range attacks, you have your short range attacks. Um, and so you're figuring out what you want to do to institute a combo. And as you're going through your opponents, um, and you're doing these different combos and you're managing your health, um, you're gaining orbs, you're buying items, you're improving your style, you're leveling up, you know, your arsenal, right? Like you're getting more attacks. Like so you're defeating opponents, and you're gaining orbs, and you're buying items, and you're buying attacks, and you're improving your style as you go on, and just your general familiarity with the game. And it's just like it's a beautiful system because right, like the combat is key to unlocking the story and progressing. And as you're progressing, is like let's just focus on Dante for like the story. As you're progressing and playing as Dante, like you're literally stepping into his shoes. Like his successes are your successes, his failures are your failures. Like you grow as he grows, right? And like you experience the same struggles. And what I like about video games is well many things, but one of the cool things that does not get talked about that much is that video games are an interactive way for you to practice and build empathy. It's a beautiful thing because again, like you literally stepping into someone else's shoes. You're growing as they're growing. It's like, and so there's the idea of the math at too. Like you're getting more powerful. You're putting in the time, putting in energy, putting in the effort. You're increasing your health, increasing your devil trigger, and you're expanding. And in a more general sense, you're just growing as your character grows, and whatever is happening in the game, you're experiencing that, and that's pretty cool. So back to like Devil May Cry in the combat, it's like so you have your long range attacks, your short range attacks, you're doing different combinations, you're gaining orbs, you're boosting your style, you're picking what style you want to use in battle. You're also at a certain point, like after mission 7, right? Like you get double trigger, and you can use that going forward, even in like replays of like different missions, right? And so you have all of that, and that's cool. And so you could just have so much fun. And while we're here, all the weapons are dope, right? Like you have the idea like Rebellion, for instance. Like I mean, like the firearms aren't bad, but like the melee weapons are the big stars to me, because like you have like the Rebellion by like default for Dante, and Ebony and Ivory, like his guns. So you have a sword and his guns. And as you go on, there's some weapons that you can find, but one of the big selling points for Devil May Cry 3, or one of the big parts of the mechanic is like as you fight like some of the bigger bosses throughout the game, right? Like some of the major bosses, like you're gaining either a different weapon or a different style, but it's mostly weapons. So like if you fight Cerberus, right? Like you do that big fight. Um, Not only are you going back and forth and you're managing your health, doing your combos and stuff like that, but once you take out Cerberus, you get his soul turned into a weapon, right? And in this case, nunchucks. And then like for Agni and Rudra, you defeat them and you get them as swords, like and Beowulf, the gauntlets and the greaves. You can't see my feet, but I rose them up. And so you get that, and you get other weapons throughout the game. But one of the big ones that I think is cool, right? Like it's just like it's such a bonkers weapon. Is you fight a succubus named Nevin. Like she shoots electricity, purple electricity, which is cool, and and like some of the puns and like wordplay like surrounding that character is like, ooh, it's a mess. But like once you beat Nevin, her soul turns into a guitar, and like so like you're literally rocking. And it's like a scythe, so it's basically you have an axe. Again, it's like it's more specifically a scythe, but the idea is like there's that connection. So you're doing that. You could actually like play the guitar, and it shoots electricity, and you can do some combos to like do a solo and just like rock it out and like finish off your opponents. And it's like it's really cool. And the double trigger for Devin works a bit differently than some of the other double triggers. Like with Nevin, you could actually fly in the Devil Trigger form, so that's really cool. And it's like it kind of takes you back to like the first Devil May Cry with one of the weapons there, which is awesome. At any rate, that's like probably my favorite weapon in the game. That or like Yamato for Virgil, because like you can play as Virgil, sure, but like whether you're playing as him or not, he has Yamato, which is awesome, and his mystical swords and his Dark Slayer style, which is similar to the Trickster style for Dante. So yeah, there's different weapons, and they it's such a cool thing because like they're not just things that you find. Although you can find some, it's like you have a vested interest in defeating your opponents because you get these new weapons and you get these new techniques. And for each of the weapons, you're buying abilities for them. For some, they have a double jump option, and some you don't. Um, so it was an interesting thing for Devil May Cry 3, where like not every ability was going to be available, because most of the time, right, you're buying new techniques, right, for the weapon, but it could be abilities like double jump in some cases. Now weirdly enough with Nevin, like if I recall, like you don't actually get double jump for that, but in the Devil May Cry, like sorry, like I mentioned before, with the Devil Trigger you can fly. So that seems backwards to me. That should be one there you can double jump. If I'm like wrong with that. I clearly need to go back and play if I've forgotten. Like I play often and I'm pretty sure, but like if not, and this may be an excuse for me to just play again, but I think that's kind of crazy since that's the case because I feel like the Rebellion, Beowulf, and Agni and Rouge were the only ones where like you're doing double jump. Like yeah, pretty sure because like Cerberus you can't, and I think like with Nevin you can't. And again, that seems crazy. Now with the firearms, they do have different ones too. Because you have Ebony and Ivory, but you get the like Kalina Ann from like Lady, which is like the rocket launcher with the bayonet. Um, so there's that, but there's also like the Spiral, which is like a rifle, and of course classic shotgun. But yeah, so there's like a lot of different options, a lot of different weapons, a lot of things you could do with the style, and you're defeating your opponents. You're gaining their souls as weapons, and you're having more tools in your utility belt. You're up in your arsenal as you go on with the ultimate clash with Virgil. Like throughout that game, you fight Virgil like three major times, and each of those are like great, and they have like kick-ass music. Um, and that soundtrack, oh my god, it rocks so hard. Is so dope. And it's just like when I think about Devil May Cry, it's like yeah, I think about this awesome game. But like I mentioned before, you know, I can't not think about math with it. Whether we're talking about in the combat or the music or you know how it's all coming together, like the stories, the missions, the structures, and all that. Um, and it definitely has impacted my life. Partially because like I dig the story, and it came at a time where I was exploring a lot of things in video games. So it was awesome and to just connect that way, but I also like the idea that the characters are ridiculous and over the top. And the whole thing is while also having soul, right? And I am very, very big on that because it's like, again, I am ridiculous and over the top quite often, but I am also quite serious sometimes too. So it's like I think having that good mix in your life is a decent balance. And I think they with Devil May Cry 3, they just play so masterfully with that. It's like there's some things they just don't take seriously, and some things that they do right. And then there are some things where it's treated as serious, like within the story, but it's absolutely ridiculous, and they know that it's ridiculous. And I think like Devil May Cry 3, Dante, he's the kind of character that like right, he might get on your nerves at first because he's just so ridiculously cocky. And there are points in the story where it's just like he couldn't always back it up, right? Like he might, you know, do some trash talking and then get hit like really hard or something like that. But I think one of the things that's cool about that, not so much him doing that, but it's like the recovery. He still didn't care. He was still going to be Dante. So I do like that part. And he would come out on top by the end. And he grows as a character throughout that game. So I think that's great. And Virgil is Virgil. I think like what's crazy about Devil May Cry 3 Virgil though is that like Virgil's in the first Devil May Cry, right? He's I guess like if you're playing in the States he's Nello Angelo, but like he's supposed to be like Nero Angelo. Either way. But you know, he's in that first game. Like he's always been a part of Devil May Cry. And I think what the crazy thing about Devil May Cry 3 though, he went from just being this like really cool opponent to being a really cool opponent who you have a better sense of like who he is like definitively, right? Because in the first one, right, he's brainwashed. He is what he is. He's like serious and you know he's cool. But in the third game, right, like he's those things too, but like he's like Dante, just different in some other ways, right? Because like he's just as stylistic, just as cocky, but he's fun. He can like more often than not back up what he's saying and what he's doing, and I dig that. And like you know, he's ever after knowledge and power, which I can respect. Not so much how he does it, or the execution I don't agree with, but like I can respect that search. Um, and I just like how that goes. And of course, you know, with Devil May Cry 3, you get Lady, and Lady is really cool. I don't think that like she necessarily gets used as well after that point, which is deeply unfortunate. But there's that. And I think like Devil May Cry 3, it was so good as like a game in and of itself, but it was a really good prequel. like, you know, and I think like so good that you, if you're doing something with Devil May Cry, you maybe shouldn't touch that, right? But we've seen them try to touch redo the origin, like they're not part of the same universe, right? But like we see the Devil May Cry reboot game and the new Devil May Cry anime where um, they do their take on, you know, Dante and Virgil origins, and it's like you really can't fuck with Devil May Cry 3 on that, and yet here we are. And for the record, I do have something to say about those real quick. Um, so, because like we've talked about Devil May Cry, we talked about Devil May Cry 2, we talked about Devil May Cry 3 a lot, um, but as far as some of the other stuff goes on, like one, Devil May Cry 3 has a manga. If you didn't know that it takes place before the game, then that's just cool, right? And then like before we talk about what I just talked about the reboot in the show, um, we have the Devil May Cry 4, which um, was a good game and even a great game at points, but like it was lacking in some areas, and that does get addressed in the future. But that was a good follow up. You had Nero. Virgil is like, you know, if he's not mentioned directly, he's definitely like heavily casting a shadow over that game, and like it's heavily implied that Virgil is like Nero's father even before that was officially, you know, confirmed. Because right, like I don't think before Devil May Cry 5 that that got officially confirmed, right? But you know, you have Nero throughout that game and his demon arm, and you know, being able to use Yamato, and Yamato being like a big plot point, you know, for but that was great. But for the other two things that I mentioned, and I'm going to throw in a third, because that's where we're at, is like there was also a follow up after Devil May Cry 3. There was it took place, you know, of course, after Devil May Cry 3, but like you had the original Devil May Cry anime, like, you know, back from like 2007. And in that one, you got to see like, you know, Lady and Trish and, you know, their dynamic with Dante, and you got to see that whole thing. And for the record, that wasn't bad, you know, like, it wasn't the best, but it wasn't bad, you know. And I really like the opening. Is now as far as like the stories that they have a take on, like Dante and Virgil's origin. Again, like you can't really fuck with Devil May Cry 3 on that. It did like a damn near perfect job. If a profession that exists for that sort of thing and for what it is, then it nailed it, right? Um, Now the Devil May Cry reboot from like 2013, right? I want to preface this with saying that it's not a bad game. It's not a great game. It's an okay game with good moments. And I think the things that work about its gameplay are things that work because it's Devil May Cry. There's certain things that they didn't change, and so they're good on that level. It's kind of like with Devil May Cry 2. It's not bad. It has things that are good about it, but the things that are good about it were largely things that did exist. That's not to say that either one of those games didn't contribute something to the series as a whole. But I think where Devil May Cry 3 failed, among other things, is that it tried to do the whole origin story with Dante and like bringing Virgil into the picture and trying to do their whole origin. They fucked up Virgil. The reboot Virgil sucks. Reboot Dante does too, but it's different. You know, I can ignore him largely. So I think they messed up in that regard. For the new Devil May Cry like anime that came out actually this year at the time of recording, for the record, I actually do like it. If you're a big fan of the games, there are gonna be things that you're gonna have issues with. But if you take it for what it is, which is an adaptation, it doesn't have to be the same, then it's largely okay. But I don't think they nailed the whole dynamic with Dante and Virgil is arguably not in the show nearly enough. This is a complaint that some people have, and I am inclined to believe them. And so they do some interesting things. It's just like I don't think, again, you can't fuck with um, that original like story from Devil May Cry 3. I just think they just did such a good job of like making a prequel game that worked, and I don't think if you're going to adapt that you should make things worse. Because you know you can adapt whatever you want, right? You can bring back this, bring back that, reboot this, reboot that, but like don't make it like suck. Don't make it shitty. And in the case of the Devil May Cry anime, I don't think it made things shitty, but like I can say that the reboot did for that arena. Because again, like what did they do with Virgil? It's like what were they thinking? But this video isn't about those like pieces of Devil May Cry material. Um, to zone back in on Devil May Cry 3 is we zone out here. It's just like, and this is to my initial point that like it's a great game that I think like it's hard to beat. And when I look at like if we focus on just the Devil May Cry games for a second, if I look at like how they stack up against one another, it's just a fascinating thing because the games that don't have Virgil like in a direct sense, they either are just okay or they're good but they're missing something, right? Which is incidentally the even ones. It's because like so you had Devil May Cry, and you know having Dante have someone that could be on his level in the form of Virgil was cool, and knowing their past was cool. Um, then Devil May Cry 2, you don't really get Virgil. Then Devil May Cry 3, you get Virgil's great reinvention. And 4, you get Nero, and you get all the stuff with Yamato on his arm. And then with 5 is such a wonderful game because it feels like, even though it's a sequel to like the whole series, it feels like it's like a particular sequel to 3, even though 4 exists. Because, and you know, for the record, like Nero is in um, 5, and he's a big part of 5. But the energy that Devil May Cry 5 is carrying, and the way it conducts like itself, and the themes, and the fact that Virgil's such a big part of that plot, it very much feels like not only a sequel to that series as a whole, but like a sequel to Devil May Cry 3 in a sense. I mean, like it is, but like you know what I mean. Like it feels like a direct sequel to that, even though you have a whole bunch of stuff in between. But it's just I kind of like that too because like if Devil May Cry 3 is the start of the series, even though it's the third game, and Devil May Cry 5 is like the end of the series, it feels real nice and makes sense to just have them like you know work real well together like that, right? They marry each other, and I dig it. And it's just like yeah, Devil May Cry 3, I think, is like one of those games where it took something that worked, that you saw throughout those first two Devil May Cry games, like, and it improved upon them, right? It took this awesome, like, combat system, because again, like Devil May Cry, like that game hits and it hits hard. It took that awesome combo system. It took some things from 2, and it's like it made them better. It added that style system. It added some more strategy in it. It added like a crazy number of combos that you could do, and I dig that. And there's no way in hell that it that it doesn't impact so many other games. It raised the bar in a crazy way that I am grateful for. And so, like, I've been a fan of that game since it came out, and that was 20 years ago. So that's wild. It's wild as hell. With that in mind, I am going to bring this to a close because, like, between like what I filmed with this part and that first part, uh, it's getting close to an hour. So yeah, I'm going to bring this video to a close. Devil May Cry 3 rocks, and you should play it if you have not played it before. And even if you have played it, you should replay it and replay it again and again and again. But yeah, 20 years of Devil May Cry 3. That is really cool to me. And that has been a great part of my life. So I'll see you in the future. Professor Prime out.